Central, how are you doing? We hope you are having a great Thursday. It's Andrew, Pastor Tyler. We're
What's
back
up?
yet again, returning guest.
Yeah.
Let's go. So that means you obviously enjoyed it. Hopefully enough to where you came back.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun last time.
Let's go. I'm super excited. We're glad that Tyler's here. We're just going to talk more about the sermon that we talked about on Sunday and see where we're going. Listen, we've said this before, but this podcast is really just a touch point for you guys. Obviously, we are covering so much this summer as we go through the book of Acts.
So much.
There's no way that we're going to be able to get to it in a 30-minute talk on Sunday morning.
Shot. Not 6 chapters.
Our hope and our prayer, honestly, is that something like this, we may have fun, we may do some silly stuff, but we really kind of deepen our kind of just understanding of what we're kind of going through. And
Absolutely.
maybe touch on some things that we're not. But hope you're having a great summer. Hope you had a great 4th of July Splash Bash, just to kind of make notice some things that are happening.
Yeah.
We've been talking about that a lot. It's happening this Sunday, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
it's Thursday, maybe Friday when you're watching this. This Sunday, Splash Bash, if you have kids, they will be graduating, correct? So this Sunday, your child may or may not be in a different area. If they're in 5th grade going into 6th grade, they will be meeting in the 400 building, correct, for Sunday mornings. Yep. If your kid's, I think, in 3rd going into 4th next year, they are moving up in a different room.
Yep.
For the most part, your child may stay in the same room, but when you print out their tag, it should have a location on it.
Yeah, and if you're confused, we have great staff members and volunteers who would love to help you navigate that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. But to celebrate that Sunday evening after church, Jervigan Aquatic Center, I think like 5 or 6 p.m. I'm not entirely sure on the time. It's somewhere. It'll be out here. There's a graphic here, Jonathan, with a time. Just put a number, 5 or 6, and then nothing crazy. That's fine. Anyways, we're doing a belly flop contest. That's what I've heard. I said it on Sunday. That's what I've been told.
I think you started that rumor.
I believe Pastor Evan said that in a podcast. We'll have to go back.
Something like that. I don't know what we're going to do. We're just going to have fun.
Belly flop contest?
Belly flop. Okay, if you're there,
I say we got to do it.
I think we all have to hold Andrew to the belly flop. There you go.
I'll do it. I think we're going to be there. Why not? It was Evan. Yeah, we're
right.
It's him. We're holding him to it. I'm going to have footage of him doing a belly flop next week on this podcast. That's a guarantee. Now he's got to do it. Take that. Anyways, we're going to have a great time. There's going to be food. So please register for that if you haven't, so we know we can feed you. We'd love to celebrate with you as your kids grow up and get older. That's crazy.
Yeah, sweet.
Man, your kid's getting older. How's that feel?
Dude, it's great. It's a lot of fun, and it's also chaotic.
Same.
Which I'm sure every parent relates to.
Absolutely. Listen, we're here with you, right in it.
Yeah.
If you have not been paying attention to the news, which may or may not be a good thing if we're being honest, but you have probably heard about Texas, all of the flooding that's happening, specifically with Camp Mystic. There was just honestly terrible tragedy. I know that we've been kind of seeing that throughout the week. Yeah. It's just been awful. So I really hope that, just be in prayer for those people.
Absolutely.
The first responders, the families.
Goodness.
I know that we're talking about Acts, and that's kind of relevant to this situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think in some way.
It's we're in this series right now where we're working through Acts, and one of the major themes of Acts is just how powerful God is. And I think in moments like this where we see a national tragedy play out, it can be really easy for us to ask big questions of God, like, why would you allow this to happen? Especially, it's a Christian camp that's affected. Not that we would want anybody to be affected by this, but especially when, it's good people trying to honor the Lord. Sure. We just have a lot of questions that come up in our minds. And I think it's important to remember that we serve an all-powerful God who is all good, who has good plans for us. And in seasons like this, it's totally appropriate to grieve and mourn and to feel sad. We should. Death was never supposed to be a part of this world. And so we naturally feel that, that pain and that hurt that comes from a tragedy like this, especially as we think through the parents and the first responders, people affected by this. So certainly it's appropriate to grieve and to mourn and to cry out, but also remember that we don't grieve as those with no hope. Yeah. We know that there will be a day where things like this don't happen anymore, where the world will be made new into the perfect world that we were always supposed to be able to inhabit. And so I just encourage you, even in the midst of the brokenness of this world, to remember that we serve the guy who reigns over it all. Yeah. The famous passage that people love to quote, the psalm that says, "Be still and know that I am God." Yeah. Before that, it's talking about the nations raging in vain and the mountains are being tossed into the sea, like this really crazy natural disaster stuff going on. And then at the end of it, it says, "Hey, but you be quiet and trust that I'm in control of it all." And I think that's where we need to find ourselves right now.
Absolutely. And I think too, that's such a timely message not even just for those that are in Texas that are affected by this situation. Obviously, that's, like you said, a national tragedy that's raw, that's, recent, but also just in general, I feel like our world, we can look at it and very easily go, man, things are broken. I think we would all agree on that, but it is important. I think it's easy too to get in the weeds of just being like, oh man, like there it goes again, like you kind of get all downtrodden and kind of kicking the bucket can along. But man, that's not how we're supposed to view the world, I think, as believers. And so, like you said, hey, we're not grieving without hope. We're not, being sad without hope. We have a hope in Jesus that is bigger than anything. So that's awesome. Hey, preached an incredible sermon last weekend. Listen, I love how practical we can get with the book of Acts. I think you did a really good job of kind of bringing some of that forward. What was something that maybe, I know that you've probably read through some of these passages and chapters and stories a lot, but was there something that kind of maybe pushed out maybe at the forefront of your mind as you were preparing for this last Sunday?
Oh man. Acts 17 has been one of my favorite passages for a while. I just think it's so helpful for us today as we think through how to engage our culture. I just really loved, Paul's very practical approach. I mean, I know, I heard from a number of you, I'm just grateful for the practicality of this sermon.
Yeah.
The reality is it's easy to write a practical sermon when Paul gives you practical things to
preach
touch on, it's not
yeah.
like I brought the message. Really, the Bible lays it out pretty clearly for us. I just pulled out some principles from the story. And, man, I just love so much. I really focused a lot in my study on this word. He looked intently at their idols. Because I just thought, man, that's so different from what my natural inclination is. My natural inclination is a run from everything that doesn't look like Jesus.
Hey.
And we've heard that sermon before.
Sure.
And again, like there's wisdom in that at times. There are situations that you need to remove yourself from. But there also is a time and a place to care enough about the people in our lives to look intently at the things that they care about, not so that we can be pulled into them, but so that we can use them to win the gospel of hearing. And man, that's the goal. That's what we're called to do. I also should probably address, I do have a correction to make from the sermon.
Ooh.
Small thing.
You heard it here first, people.
Yeah. I told you all that the altar to an unknown God was started by a drought. It wasn't a drought. It was a plague.
Ooh.
So I'll get my natural disasters correct next time. I apologize
There's so
for
many
that.
of them. Let's be honest. But I think what you said is so true too about like, I love that there's just, because you kind of laid it out for us though on Sunday. It's like, hey, there is a large percentage of us who do not spread the gospel in part because maybe it's just like, it's not that we don't want to, it's just, there's maybe some inclination of like, well, how do we do that? What does that look like? Yeah. And I think speaking, like you use that, you saying that phrase, he looked intently at their idols. Like to me, the first thing that pops into my mind is like, he wanted to maybe in a way, like understand why they even viewed that thing as an idol.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I think to be able to speak to someone's life, you kind of have to understand how they view the world on some level.
Yep.
So you can maybe kind of, go in there and say, hey, well, you view this way. So let's think about that or talk about that. But if you don't understand anything about that, man, you can't do that.
Yeah, well, and it's funny, right? Like he says specifically in here that the Athenians love to sit around and talk about new ideas all day. And it's like, for us, it's really easy for the Bible to feel like this ancient story. And it's like, oh, we don't have anything in common with these people. And as I read through that, I just kind of chuckled to myself because I was like, man, can you imagine a place where people just, let's maybe use the word post brand new things all day long. And all they do is want to talk about the latest news or the latest theory. I know it's hard. Yeah, like it's so hard to imagine a place like, maybe X or Instagram where all people do is talk about new ideas, YouTube, podcasts.
TikTok, man.
We're the same. Yep. Like we do the same things today. And so as much as it's easy to feel distant from them, the reality is, man, there's nothing new under the sun. Yeah. That's the book of Ecclesiastes, and that's still true. And so we can do the same things that Paul did. It's going to look different, but the same things are still true for us today.
Absolutely. And I think too, like at the bottom of it all, or at the root of it all, it's like, listen, guys, if you have people in your life, coworkers, friends, family, whatever it is, like I think the biggest thing that you can take away from this is just if you have a friend or a coworker that does not know Jesus, obviously your goal is, hey, I want to share the gospel with this person, but don't make that like the headlining factor of like you having a relationship with them. I think,
man, don't be like, hey, I want to start a friendship with you. And then a month in be like, psych, I only became your friend to talk about
Yes.
Jesus. It's like,
Yeah.
no, be their friend because you genuinely care about them.
Yeah.
And out of that,
And
care
I think
for them.
I think that
comes
care comes from the Lord placing that kind of love in our
Amen,
life
dude.
of like, that's where we're supposed to lead from. You know what I
Amen.
mean? Like we should genuinely care about people enough to be their friend.
Yes.
So that, obviously there's a little bit of, and that's like a weird line that you have to kind of play with, of like, hey, you want to be strategic about sharing the gospel with people, but you also don't want to be manipulative with it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so I think that comes down to, a quote that I've heard over the years is, and this is a very generalized quote, but it's like, I care more about your soul than anything else you're doing in your life.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so being able to kind of pierce through some of someone's sin, because we all have it,
Yeah.
and kind of not look at that for what they're doing, but what their soul is thinking in that moment or
Yes.
carrying in that moment.
Yes.
And that's, you got to understand it. You got to meet people where you are. Even the Gospels, I know, the 4 Gospels, they're all written from different perspectives. I
Yep.
believe Luke was a doctor, or,
Yep.
he kind of wrote. So if you read through some of these Gospels, even the wording and the phrasing that they use is very specific to the crowds that they were being read to. And so I've always thought that was so cool and kind of that symbol of like meeting people where they are.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. You see that all over the Bible. For sure. The Gospels are a great example of that.
Let's go. And I know we did, it was 15 through 20.
Yeah, 6
correct?
chapters total.
So 6 chapters total. We pulled one story from
Yeah,
one
one
of those
chapter,
chapters.
yeah.
I know that there was a few, if you guys have read through 15 through 20, man, there is like
So much.
a ton of stuff
So
that
much
kind
we
of
could
goes
talk about.
down. And we're just going to kind of glaze through some of it. Hopefully you guys have read it. If you have not, please go back and read it.
Absolutely.
I know 6 chapters is a lot, but even just getting a basic understanding of like kind of the journey of the church in this early time is huge, I think.
Oh, for sure. And this week, every week it would be helpful for you, but especially on a week like this, that Acts discussion guide is going to lead you with questions through each of these. So you can kind of take a little bit of a bigger dive into each of the sections. So I just highly recommend working through those.
And so like you look at right at 15, like right in the beginning,
Yeah.
Council of Jerusalem.
Yes.
I know we were talking about this earlier. You were saying, what did you say? Something like the building we're in.
Yeah, like we would not be standing here. You probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast if Acts 15 wasn't in the Bible. Like legitimately, that's how important it is. It's an easy one to skip over, but there's this conversation that's basically the way I phrased it on Sunday was right. What are the boundary lines of the gospel? And that really is what's happening is they're trying to figure out what requirements do we place on people who are coming to know Jesus. And there's a group of people who believe that we're still bound to the Old Testament law in certain ways. And then there's a group of people who's saying, hey, we don't have to follow any of that anymore because Jesus sets us free from that.
Yeah.
And the Jerusalem Council is them coming together to discern from the Old Testament scriptures and from the Holy Spirit, what does God have to say about this? And so there's this huge argument and debate that happens. Peter gets up and gives a sermon. Paul and Barnabas tell about all the crazy things that they've experienced. And then finally, James, Jesus' brother, gets up and says, no, guys, this is what the Old Testament said was going to happen, is that the Gentiles, which is anybody who's not Jewish, so there's 2 groups, the Jews and the Gentiles. You'll see those all over the place throughout the New Testament. They were arguing really over the Gentile believers, what requirements we put on them, which is any of you who are not Jewish as well, so this applies to you. What requirements do we put on these Gentiles as they come to faith in Jesus? And the answer they come to is they don't really need any. Like Jesus has cleared the way for them. He's made that very clear. He's sent the Holy Spirit to dwell in these Gentile believers before they did any of these extra things. I think it's helpful. A lot of times when we talk about the gospel, we use courtroom imagery, which is great. The Bible uses courtroom imagery.
Absolutely.
But there's also an image that we don't always talk about, and that's citizenship imagery. Okay. So if you think about Roman citizenship, there's really 2 ways that you could become a citizen in Rome. One was you were born into it.
Naturally.
Which makes sense. The other one is if you were somebody coming into Rome from the outside, or maybe Rome had conquered your city recently and you wanted to become a Roman citizen, you would pay for your citizenship.
Okay.
And basically what they're talking about is how do you become a citizen of God's kingdom? And the answer is, well, Jesus paid your citizenship fee.
Yeah.
Like it's already paid for.
Yeah.
And so the conversation is, what requirements do they have to meet after Jesus has paid the citizenship fee? And the conclusion is, that's not how it works.
Yeah.
If the citizenship fee's been paid for, you're a citizen.
Isn't that
That's
like,
it.
it's such a crazy, I feel like I was reading something about this the other day too, of like the hardest thing to do, believe it or not, is accept the free gift.
Oh man, it
Jesus.
is.
Like it's such a like countercultural weird thing for our minds to
Yes,
wrap around
dude.
of like, hey, this is free.
Yes.
It was paid. You were paid for.
And I think
You
it's
know what I mean?
helpful to see that like legitimately the earliest leaders of the church struggled with this because they were even like, no, surely it's not totally free.
Like, come
right?
on, there's got to be a catch here.
And it's like, no, God over and over again, it's like, no, it's free.
Yeah.
It really, really is free. Now they add in some things at the end and they're like, hey, maybe let's not eat food that's polluted by idols and maybe let's not, engage in sexual immorality.
Some
but these are
boundaries,
like,
healthy ones.
like some good things we'd all be like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't do that. It's not crazy. And again, it's knowing that you're a citizen of God's kingdom. Yeah. This is how we live
should
now.
act.
It's not, you can only become a citizen once you've done X, Y, Z.
But it's
really
living from that place of, hey, this was a free gift to me. So you know what I mean? I love that. And yeah, like you said, it may not be the most like glamorous chapter of like, these demons are being cast out or like all this stuff. But it's like, they're making decisions that quite literally have impacted the church today.
To this day.
Yeah. And that's awesome. And like you go into 16, Timothy joins Paul and Silas. Timothy is one of my favorite characters in the Bible. Dude. I love Timothy. His story is incredible. He does some amazing things, but just kind of seeing the start of that, him joining Paul and Silas. And what were they doing? They were going out and kind of sharing with all the other churches, hey, this is what we just decided.
Yeah.
And kind of like spreading that and strengthening all these churches as they
What was fun, the story right before Timothy joins is Paul and Barnabas, who, if you've been reading through the book of Acts, is the dynamic duo. This is the
guys, man.
The two that are going around planting churches all over the place. The Shaq and Kobe, exactly, of Acts. That's
MJ
hilarious.
And Pippen.
Let's go. Oh man, I'm going to lose it. Gronk and... somebody's
Brady?
gonna roast me. Brady.
Oh,
yes.
You took a while on that one.
I know, dude. The face was there, the name was not there. You can roast me in the comments for that. That's fine.
Fine. We forgive you.
But
you're a Fever fan. That's fine. Or a Hawkeye fan.
Hawkeye fan. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Well, Fever too. That's a back on subject here. Right before this, Paul and Barnabas break up. Actually, like the
they kind of get a disagreement.
Broke up because
the bromance is
John
gone.
Mark,
yeah,
who is this guy who's joined them for some missionary journeys, but then persecution got hard, and apparently Mark leaves. He's just like, I'm out. This is too hard. And so Paul and Barnabas go on another missionary journey, and Barnabas wants to bring Mark with, and Paul's like, I'm not bringing this guy. Are you kidding me? Which there's a whole story there. Like, it's super interesting. But basically it starts with a disagreement that splits these two up. And because of that, Paul takes Silas with him and then ultimately has to pick up another, start a new band. And Timothy becomes a part of that.
Timothy's the dude.
It's crazy how God duplicates their efforts because of a disagreement. And I think there's a ton for us to learn from that. But also, it's helpful to know that John Mark goes on to write the Gospel of Mark.
Yep.
So he becomes a significant figure, even though he has a little bit of a rough start. And even beyond that, 2 Timothy, which is Paul's last letter we have, he specifically requests that Mark come visit him because he's, quote, helpful to me in my ministry. Yeah. So there's reconciliation there. Just like some super practical, I don't know. Sometimes I think we think these Bible characters are super inaccessible, but it's like, no, they struggled with things too.
Same dude.
They got in disagreements, good, godly people, and there was fights, and they had to work through reconciliation, and God's still faithful in the midst of them.
Yeah. And I think too, like if we, even like through all of these 5 chapters, I feel like something, and this is a constant theme, I think, in the book of Acts, even just going off of what you just said of like, hey, resistance and friction creates something.
Yes.
An opportunity to grow, right? Not just from a personal level, obviously, but as we see in the book of Acts, like a corporate church, kingdom level, like, hey, you're getting kicked out, you're getting put in prison, you're having disagreements with somebody. Like God is, if you allow God to work in those moments, man, it's only going to get better. And so I think that that's a huge, hey, if you want to get practical with it, man, in your life, if you have things that are happening in your life that you feel like, why am I going through this? Why is this hardship here? Like, I know that it's so hard. Even for me, I know all of us could say this. It's hard to have that kingdom mindset of like,
for sure.
What is God trying to teach me in this moment? Right? Like, why, you know what I mean? That's such a weird thing to think about, I feel like sometimes in the midst of hardship, but if that's the mindset we have, man, God can work in our lives.
Dude, for sure.
So much.
And there's also a level of, we have to be willing to not know the answer right now. And be faithful nonetheless. Oh, yeah. We have the benefit of hindsight and go, oh, here's all these lessons to pull from their lives. But like, I don't know that Paul knew at this time when he's disagreeing with Barnabas that like in the long run, there's going to be reconciliation and all this fruitful ministry is going to come from the split and all these things are going to happen. It could have
felt like the world was falling.
Yeah. He's like, dude, so my best friend is leaving me. The guy who was like my mentor into ministry, we can't seem to reconcile on this. And now I got to go on my own. Like that would be super frustrating. And you don't see the lessons in the middle of the confusion.
Yeah.
you sometimes only see them in hindsight. And there is a level of following Jesus that we have to be willing to say, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't have to have the answer right now. I'm going to trust God when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And again, like we said, we encourage you, go through and read these stories in 15 through 20. There's so many other good ones. Paul and Silas get thrown in prison. There's a crazy story with the jailer.
Yeah.
There's just so much good stuff in there. I'm just kind of going through this. They hang out in like Corinth for like a year and a half and kind of establish the church of Corinth there. And there's Ephesus. He leaves. This is a huge thing. Like Paul leaves all the elders and people in Ephesus as like, there's like a huge emotional moment at the end where he's like, you're never going to see me again. And, he charges them with just some incredible words and direction and guidance, I think it's just great. I think there's so many good things.
Yeah. I mean, we could spend way too long on every single
40
one of
episodes
these.
of this
dude,
for all of this.
But I think it's worth spending some time on that last story where he says goodbye to the Ephesian elders. Obviously, there's a ton of ministry principles here, right? Like Paul says to them, I preach to you the whole counsel of God. And really in that, he's just talking about like, hey, I made it clear to you how Jesus came and accomplished everything for you. I've made it clear to you what it looks like to live as a citizen of the kingdom of heaven, what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. I've given you all the tools you need. And from what we know, he was only in Ephesus for like a year and a half. So I think sometimes there's a temptation for us to think that, I don't know, it requires a 4-year Bible college degree and then a master's degree on top of that to really understand the fullness of the scriptures. Yeah. And it took Paul a year and a half, and he was like, hey, you know everything you need to know.
And I think, like, I just read this, Acts 20 verse 35. This is like this is like the last thing he says to them. It says, in everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words the Lord Jesus himself said, it is more blessed to give than receive. Like, hey, in everything that we do, this is why we're doing it.
Yes.
Right. And like, that does not, like you said, that doesn't take 17 years to figure out. Right. No, man, I mean, figure out is a loose word, but to hear and understand and to internalize, like.
Yeah. And I want to be clear on this. I'm not saying that there's not always more to learn. Of course there's always more to learn, but there is a level of just practical obedience. I mean, we could sit here and we could have a, 6 episode, every episode's an hour-long podcast series on how to pray. Yeah. And that would be helpful.
You could very easily do it.
But also you could just go pray, go talk to God.
Yeah.
And so there's some levels where there's always more to learn. There's always more to grow in, but also there's a level of just, hey man, just do the thing God's called you to do. And he makes that clear through the scriptures. And it doesn't take, all this education to get there. We just have to follow it. And also to the point that you just made, there's also a level where Paul goes, hey, look at my example.
Yep.
And so that's something we didn't necessarily get to get all the way into in the sermon this week, but there is a level of, man, live your life in such a way that people go, that's what it looks like to follow Jesus.
Yep.
He goes, I set the example for you. I showed you how that you're supposed to do this, and now you go do it. And so people can look at him and go, well, what did Paul do when he was here? Because he was trying to do what Jesus would do. And so then what did Paul do? And now this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And it's this really powerful image of following the leader, right? Follow somebody who's pointing you to the person you're
even I don't know exactly where it's at. I was reading through some of this morning, but there's a group of people who go out and start performing miracles, casting out demons. Yeah. And they quite literally say, Jesus, the one who Paul preached is like kind of really referencing like, the guy who, hey, he's the one who said this, that Jesus, just like Paul did, I'm casting you out or whatever it was.
Which is a great,
I love that.
It's another like helpful pointer though. If you go back and read that story, which is a wild story, it's the 7 sons of Sceva go and try to, exorcise demons like what Paul is doing. And so they go out and they say, hey, we cast you out in the name of Jesus, the one that Paul is preaching. And the demons look at him and say, Jesus we've heard of. Paul we've heard of.
Not you.
I don't know who you are. And then the demons beat him up. That's in the Bible. That's the real story.
Who you is.
And I think there's a helpful, there is a helpful corrective here where we go, hey, we are going to follow somebody who looks like Jesus so we can be more like Jesus. But that second part of the sentence matters. I'm not following Paul for the sake of following Paul. I'm following Paul because of who he's following. And ultimately I'm trying to get to be more like Jesus. That's the goal. And so these the 7 sons of Sceva, basically, their problem is, man, they are trying to shortcut what it looks like to follow Jesus. They're just trying to play authority games and power games.
They see Paul and they're like, oh, we want to be like Paul.
It's like a magic trick to them, right? They're like, hey, this guy's doing cool stuff. We want to do cool stuff. We'll just do cool stuff like him. And they miss the fact that the power comes from the person that Paul was following.
Beat up by a demon. That's pretty crazy.
Dude, it's a wild story. There's some wild stories in Acts. If you haven't been reading it, I really encourage you. It is a page turner.
Absolutely. Hey, this weekend, we are going to go through chapter 21 through 23.
Yes.
I believe. And so, hey, listen, it's a lot of reading. We're giving you a lot of homework. If you haven't read, the past 6, do that, get caught up, go through the next 3. I believe we're going to be settling in on that 22 a lot. So maybe definitely try to make sure to read that so that you are prepared. You've done your homework. You're ready to receive the word on Sunday.
Yeah.
And if you have questions, hit us up in the comments. We have a Q&A box on our website and our app.
Absolutely.
We'd love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts and hopefully help you. So
yeah.
Anything else you got to say?
No, I'd encourage you, dive into this book. And if you haven't been doing it, listen, this is a long book. It's the second longest book in the New Testament.
Ooh, that's a fun fact.
Yeah, fun fact. But
what's the first?
Luke.
Ooh.
By verse count, not chapter count. We don't need to get too nerdy into it. But
I love that you know that. That's so good.
But I promise you, it will be worth it. Like, however much time you spend in this, there will be a return on your investment.
Absolutely.
And like, you will see God speak to you in your situation. I mean, the situations that they find themselves in are so crazy, and things do not always work out well for them. And I promise you, you will find yourself in one of these stories if you take the time to sit down and read through it. And God will speak to you clearly through that. So, and that's a promise I can guarantee to you, not because I have any special wisdom or insight, but because it's a promise that God gives you.
Yeah.
His word will not return void. And so if you really take the time to study this, I promise you, you'll see a return on that investment, and it will be worth all the time you put into it, for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. You will find yourself. Yeah, that's good. Hey, we love you guys. Church, we will see you on Sunday. Have a great weekend.
See you later.
Goodbye.